Oh gosh, look at the crowd.
Come this way.
Those who spread goodness radiate happiness to everyone around them. Introducing LOLC Finance Credit Cards. Fuel the goodness in you.
Welcome to LMD TV. I'm Ashwini Vedakan, and joining us this week on Talking Business is the Group Chief Customer Officer for Dialogue Asiata, Sandra De Souza. Welcome to the show, Sandra. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me on this show. It's exciting to be here.
Sandra, could you give us an overview of the role of AI for communication service providers in a local context?
Yeah. So when you think about AI, we all know that it's a disruptor in the communications industry. And for sure, within the next 2 years or so, in Sri Lanka as well, we will see Sri Lanka embracing this kind of technology. If we really want to grow exponentially, I think we really have to also, and particularly, it's been an advantage during the post-pandemic era in digitization. So all CSPs need to kind of embrace AI and machine learning to cope with the exponential growth and demand. This enables actually these CSPs like us to quickly detect, diagnose, and recover from service impacting issues without human intervention. So this is actually an area in which a lot of the telcos globally and also telcos in Sri Lanka, I'm sure, are working on. Typical AI investments focused usually around network optimization, preventive maintenance, virtual assistance, and also robotic process automation, which is commonly known as RPA. So AI applications use advanced algorithms to look for patterns within data, enabling telcos to both detect as well as predict network anomalies and allowing us to proactively fix problems before they actually impact customer experience negatively. I think some of the advantages with enabling AI within the telco industry in particular would be the ability of learning to build self-learning knowledge bases that can deliver the right solution and recommendations to customers, making the job of particularly the frontline employees within service providers so much easier. So it also actually allows for a better employee experience when they are supported in order to be able to serve their customers better. Also, the ability of understanding, reasoning, and collaboration is an area in AI which makes a lot of business sense and add value. I think it also helps to gain a deeper understanding of customers in order to be able to do targeted like cross-sell, upsell. Through currently, I think it's no longer about broad segments of customers, it's about micro segmentation, right? So the ability to do micro segmentation is really, really enhanced with the use of AI. And a typical use case would be to sort of recommend offers, manage brand perceptions, push relevant content to customers, and provide the right kind of products and services, which will help to improve what in, I would say, the customer experience world is known as NPS, which stands for Net Promoter Score. So that's the score by which mostly service companies look at whether their customers are loyal, whether their customers are willing to recommend, and whether their customers are happy with using their services. Also, when planning like channel strategy, now, as you know, there are physical channels, digital channels, social channels for brands to interact with customers. So when you have such a myriad of channels, there's also the need to be able to understand where best you can use AI, which will help to kind of learn customers' preferred channels, the activities within each channel, and their areas of interest, their spend patterns, in order to build deeper and more granular insights, I would say. So there's a lot of advantages actually when you look at even in the local context. I know that telcos, a lot of companies in Sri Lanka, a lot of multinationals as well, are really harnessing the power of AI right now to be able to build better propositions and offer better customer experience or a better engagement with customers.
What are the most significant developments in the IT and BPM industry in the last 2 years?
Okay, so when you consider the last 2 years, mostly has been pandemic years, but I think for our industry, it has been really good. And the IT BPM industry in Sri Lanka has consistently seen double-digit growth, particularly in recent years, and currently has the strongest growth potential, I would say, among all export sectors. We are currently standing as the fourth largest in the export industry. If you consider like the past decade or so, we have grown by over 300%. As at 2019, our industry made a contribution of about 1.5 billion US dollars. And also provides employment to over 150,000 professionals. That's roughly contributing approximately 15% to the Sri Lankan export service exports. I would also say that the IT BPM industry is by now, although it has existed, for well over 2 decades, by now it is widely accepted as being, truly a sector for growth with very high growth potential. The pandemic has shown us that our industry is agile, is nimble and resilient, as majority of our companies have risen to the occasion and adapted their business and work models to cope with the global disruption caused by the pandemic. So almost about 90% of our IT and BPM companies in Sri Lanka had minimal disruption, I would say, to their regular operations, and in fact has seen growth in the last 15 months. So we are very hopeful of the contribution that our industry can make to support the government of Sri Lanka agenda as well. So if you think a little bit about the kind of support that we are gaining, therefore, there's significant momentum, I would say, currently from, government of industry institutions such as our Ministry of Technology, ICTA, EDB, TRC, BOI, Ministry of Finance, as well as Ministry of Education, having very specific focus with Presidential Task Force to set up as well that fosters and enables conducive, I would say, regulatory environment and facilitating the build of infrastructure needed to create the kind of conditions that are favorable to starting new companies, operating business efficiently, growing markets, and of course, building industry branding as well, which gives us that much more strength in terms of a country branding. We have a brand called IOI, which is Island of Ingenuity. That is the brand of Sri Lankan IT software exports. So gives us sort of a level playing field to compete globally, I would say.
What initiatives are being taken towards the development of digital skill development to aid inclusion and diversity in the country?
So Sri Lanka aims to be a global IT BPM destination and to unlock the sector growth by a factor of 5. From SLASCOM, we foresee the industry achieving a US dollar 5 billion exports by 2022, creating an additional 200,000 direct jobs, as well as a fair proportion of indirect jobs, and launching 1,000 startups. In it, my personal aspiration is to see if we might actually be able to make a 15 to 20% contribution by female technopreneurs or female entrepreneurs within these 1,000 startups. On a more recent study conducted by the startup genome, globally on female tech participation, Sri Lanka stands at approximately 28%, and the percentages of the female founders in Sri Lanka was fairly low, lower than the global average, approximately about 14%. And this is one of our key focus areas also. So I think this really is, one or two very kind of recent data points. And if I were to talk about SLASCOM, here we have initiated last year something called Women Technopreneurs, which is a forum that really focuses on building, I would say, supporting women entrepreneurs as well as leadership positions. And we really want to look at benefiting from like the 55% female population in the country. And also in our university system, there's more women participation at undergraduate level. And we want to actively make sure that they can all come to our workforce to support our industry. Also, the Women's Chamber for Digital in Sri Lanka was set up for the sector by the ministry and also ICTA, focused on building digital skills and enabling digital businesses that are female-led. So particularly beyond the Western province and focusing on the regional development is what our focus is from, both these chambers and even from ICTA they have a program that kind of focuses very specifically to address diversity and inclusion within their agenda, which is, of course, part of their technology diffusion roadmap. And this has been created including education platforms, workshops, seminars, setting up of innovation labs, university industry collaboration, even research grants to really sort of help achieve, I would say, about 75% digital literacy and 100% public sector digital literacy by 2024, which is ICTA's, I think, aspiration and target, which then automatically, I would say, broadly would address diversity and inclusion anyway.
And on that note, we'll be going in for a short break. Welcome back to the show as we continue our conversation with the Group Chief Customer Officer for Dialog Axiata, Sandra De Souza. Sandra, in your view, how can the telecommunications industry become more sustainable, and what do you consider the key components of this goal?
Telecommunications network operators specifically, the issue of sustainability has become very urgent. And I think in Sri Lanka, we haven't really paid as much attention as we should have. The unprecedented demand for digital communications, especially even during the pandemic, has forced telco infrastructure to consume more energy than ever, expanding their carbon footprint. So this demand likely will continue or increase as companies not only rush to adopt remote work during the pandemic, but make this a more sort of permanent part of their businesses and work lifestyle, right? So telco sector obviously would be a game changer on sustainability, shrinking its own as well as helping others to shrink their own carbon footprints. I know that in the telco sector, there are lots of different initiatives that I am aware of, even locally, that we are engaged on in trying to see how we also can make a significant contribution to achieving these sustainability goals. If you look at globally, investors and capital markets are paying more and more attention to environmental, society, and governance criteria, right? Commonly known as ESG. And of course, climate change has been a major focus, particularly in 2019 and today even, when 1/3 of the assets which are under management worth trillions of dollars are being managed under this ESG criteria, which in Sri Lanka mostly we call it sustainability, but it's actually, I think, the encompassing idea of ESG itself. Within the global telco domain, I think there's a lot of focus, and we too need to do that. Technology, of course, has the potential to help significantly reduce global emission during the coming decades. And this is top priority on a lot of our agenda. Certainly, it's a key priority that we are initiating from SLASCOM as well for the tech industry. And we are supported by not just the companies in the tech industry, even those that have a good practice and a mature practice across sectors are collaborating with us to help us set this up, from the government sectors to banking and so on. If you look at digitization, it's going to be a really kind of a main contributor to meet the ambitions of zero net emissions by 2050, right? Which is one of those global targets, that has been identified by ESG as initiatives as well for our industry. And I think that technology and especially telecoms are really supporting other sectors, like I said before, to achieve these environmental goals. So I think a lot of the companies in Sri Lanka also have their goals in place and are working on initiatives that, to look at reducing carbon footprint, like I read even on today's news about an initiative from Haley. So I think it's very encouraging, but I don't think we're doing enough soon enough. And this is something that needs to take high priority in all of the board agendas across the companies in Sri Lanka, I would say.
Sandra, customer experience is one of the most critical aspects of business success. How well is the telecom industry addressing this?
So I can talk for, I mean, I really think the customer experience industry is forged and by the telecoms, or even defined by the telecoms sector in Sri Lanka. I know when I first started out in this industry 33 years back, even back then, I think we started out the first sort of customer service back in the day kind of function at first to really what it has now grown to be known as the customer experience industry, 3 decades later. And I think we are very advanced in terms of what we can do and how we manage customer experience as a practice. But I think the newer technologies, like we discussed earlier on AI and machine learning and so on, we would be able to do a lot more than we have ever done in order to ensure that our customers' experiences or expectations are managed. More so, as I said before, on AI machine learning initiatives, it allows us to proactively manage rather than simply react to a customer's, request or need that they would have, and to better manage their expectations.
Nationwide data usage has doubled during the pandemic. Is the telecom industry well equipped to meet this demand without compromising quality?
Okay, so I think, at first when the pandemic hit, not just in Sri Lanka, but globally, the telco industry became, the most stressed out because we became the most sought after industry, right? For any citizen in the country to be able to literally, live, work, communicate, with the outside world outside of your own home. It was only the use of, telecoms, and that too, a lot of the data use, because a lot of, I would say, kids even had to get on Zoom calls and so on to do their education. Businesses had to, get online and use digital channels. Almost everyone in the country, I mean, had no other choice, right? So that being the case, I think at first, the telcos found it hard to cope with the, overnight increase in demand. But subsequently, I think have managed this really very well. And particularly, when you look at Gamata Sang Nivedana, which is an initiative, from TRCSL and the telcos jointly working on this. Obviously, there's going to be better and better improvements you'll see, and the quality will improve, network coverage, data latency will get better. And of course, it's a longer term program, so nothing is, nothing can be done overnight. But I'm sure we are well set with the plans that are at hand to really be able to bring the absolute best in terms of connectivity and quality to our citizens in the country.
Well, this has been an insightful conversation, but unfortunately, we've reached the end of our segment. Thank you for joining us on the show this evening, Sandra.
Thank you so much once again for inviting me to the show.
Coming up, we have the latest from the LMD Nielsen IQ Business Confidence Index. Stay tuned.
You love the feeling of being renewed. To stay beautiful every single day. To breathe just like we do, because you are truly delicate, protecting the ones who've been with us through the years. With Sayalac Care, the only wood coating that truly protects you. Sayalac Wood Coatings from JAT.
Welcome back to the show, and here's the latest from LMD Nielsen's IQ Business Confidence Index, or BCI. The BCI remained unchanged in July, registering 87 for the second consecutive month. This represents a deterioration compared to the corresponding month of last year, when the index stood at 97 and places it more than 20 points below its 12-month average. Nielsen IQ's Director of Consumer Insights, Tarika sheds light on this by stating, with the country opening up again, immunization drive accelerating with more than 30% of the population being vaccinated and a number of COVID-19 cases on the decline, the situation is gradually becoming more manageable. People and businesses have more or less overcome the fear that gripped the nation at the onset of the pandemic and are settling down to embrace the new normal, she elaborates. With the island-wide immunization campaign gathering momentum, together with the receipt of several consignments of vaccines in recent weeks and travel restrictions easing, we may see economic activity picking up in the coming months. This could have a positive impact on the BCI in the near term. However, as we outlined in the July edition of LMD, the general direction of the index will depend on how the country tackles macroeconomic challenges such as bolstering its dwindling reserves, meeting its debt obligation, bridging its ballooning trade deficit, and mitigating the foreign exchange crises. And that's all the time we have for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.